Our exhibition, entitled Prince Abdülmecit Efendi and the Art of Calligraphy in the Galleries of the Arts of Book and Calligraphy Collection, is organized to show how this prince inherited the talent for and interest in calligraphy passed down by his forebears. Before visiting this exhibition, I will speak about the calligrapher sultans related to Prince Abdülmecit. Royal Ottoman children, particularly the princes, known as Şehzade, were taught calligraphy, foreign languages, and literature as part of their schooling. This meant that reading books in different languages and writing a beautiful calligraphic hand were inherent parts of their lives from a young age. They were brought up with books and keen to own books that were works of art. So they commissioned manuscripts created by artists of the age with texts written by calligraphers, decorated by illuminators, sometimes illustrated by the painters, and enclosed in precious bindings. They founded libraries to house their book collections. Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror's books in Eastern and Western languages, Sultan Bayezid II's patronage of the calligrapher Şeyh Hamdullah, and collection of rare manuscripts, Sultan Mustafa II and his younger brother Ahmed III's close relationship with the calligrapher Hafız Osman, the freestanding library building constructed at the Topkapı Palace by Ahmed III, the libraries built by Mahmud I in Hagia Sophia and Fatih Mosque, the Osmaniye Library, whose construction was begun by Mahmud I and then completed by Osman III, the library established by Sultan Abdülhamid II at Yıldız Palace, and libraries of rare manuscripts founded as pious endowments by mothers of the sultans all demonstrate the Ottoman dynasty's love of books that continued over the centuries. Members of the dynasty with a talent for calligraphy and a particular interest in this art produced works of calligraphy themselves, including texts for their own books, calligraphic compositions, and inscription panels. Şehzade Korkut, the prince and the son of the bibliophile Sultan Mahmud II, wrote the text of a Quran around 1500. Another Quran, dated 1754, is the work of Şehzade Mehmed, a son of Ahmed III, who was himself a calligrapher, although the later Sultan and Mahmud II are said to have written copies of the Quran. These have not survived to the present day. As a young Şehzade, Ahmed III studied calligraphy under the renowned calligrapher Hafız Osman, together with his elder brother Mustafa II. The grandsons of Ahmed III, Mustafa IV, and Mahmud II were both taught calligraphy by palace calligrapher Kebecizade Mehmet Vasfi during their youth. Calligraphic exercises written by the future Sultan Mahmud II to show to his teacher Kebecizade have survived. Notes written on these exercises by the Şehzade and his teacher are valuable documentation of how the lessons were conducted. Although they give the impression that the lessons were conducted at a distance, almost by correspondence, it's also probable that lessons were also held in person, since Kebecizade was serving as palace calligraphy teacher at this time. Mahmud II received his diploma, icazet, from Kebecizade in 1807, when he was 17 years old, a year before he succeeded to the throne. Following his succession, Mahmud studied Sulus script under the calligrapher Mustafa Rakım and wrote calligraphic panels in Rakım style. Mahmud II's son, Sultan Abdülmecit, wrote calligraphy in the style of Mahmud Celaleddin, an eminent calligrapher of the period. He received his icazet from Mahmud Celaleddin's two students, Mahmud Tahir and Kazasker Mustafa İzzet. The latter wrote the texts of manuscripts for Pertevniyal Valide Sultan, a wife of Sultan Mahmud II and mother of Sultan Abdülaziz, as well as for Sultan Abdülmecit and his mother, Bezmi Alem Valide Sultan. Mahmud II and his son Abdülmecit both had close relationship with their calligraphy teachers, Mustafa Rakım and Kazasker Mustafa İzzet, respectively. Sultan Abdülmecit wrote verses from the Quran, calligraphic panels consisting of inscriptions about being a victorious and just ruler, and kıt'as in the style of his teacher. He had his kıt'as decorated by illuminators and presented these as gifts to his viziers. Some of these consist of exactly the same texts, suggesting that the Sultan made multiple copies for distribution to his chosen recipients. Sultan Abdülmecit's favorite calligraphic style was talik. The talik printing font, as you know, was designed for the celebrated talik calligrapher Yeserizade Mustafa İzzet in 1842 for the printer Mühendisyan, at the command of Sultan Abdülmecit. In 1848, a new design was made by Raci Efendi, and talik began to widely used by printers. The clearest expression of Sultan Abdülmecit's wish to encourage talik as a printing font is found in the rather long introduction to Hilye Hakani, a book that Mühendisyan printed using the talik font designed by the calligrapher Raci Efendi. The introduction explains that Sultan Abdülmecit commanded that a new talik font be designed for the printing house founded by Mühendisyan, and that samples printed on colored paper were prepared for his inspection. The Hilye Hakani was selected as a propitious first text printed in the new font. Not only did the use of talik for printed books became widespread, as the Sultan had wished, but many manuscripts, primarily Qurans and prayer books, were also written in talik. We don't know which master calligrapher taught Abdülmecit's young brother Sultan Abdülaziz, but it seems likely that he made use of the exercises written by his elder brother when taking lessons from Kazasker Mustafa İzzet. However, he was probably not as keenly interested in calligraphy as other sultans, since very few examples of his work have survived. Moreover, these do not appear to be his own designs, but copies of inscriptions by other calligraphers. Abdülmecit's son, Sultan Abdülhamit II, became a skilled carpenter, although it's thought that he too studied calligraphy under Kazasker Mustafa İzzet before succeeding to the throne. However, Abdülhamit didn't choose to follow the study of calligraphy. Nevertheless, he established a large library at Yıldız Palace, as is known for his love of manuscript books. Just as the widespread use of talik script had been encouraged during the reign of Sultan Abdülmecit, so an artistically designed Kufi script rose to the fore during the reign of Sultan Abdülhamit II, as evidenced by both inscriptions and printed books. In view of Sultan Abdülmecit's keen interest in calligraphy, we can assume that his youngest son, Mehmet VI Vahidettin, must also have been taught by master calligraphers at the wish of his father. Whether his palace calligraphy teacher was Kazasker Mustafa İzzet, who was by now in his 70s, is unknown, but he did copy writing by that famous calligrapher, as we see from Mehmet VI's surviving work. This is shown by one of the rare inscription panels bearing the colophon of Mehmet VI, which is again a copy of a panel in Celisülüs by Kazasker Mustafa İzzet. Abdülaziz's son, Prince Abdülmecit, is best known as a painter, but he was also a calligrapher. The identity of his teacher is unfortunately not known, but it's both thought that during the time that he was confined to the palace, he may have been taught by a minor calligrapher and learned by making copies of calligraphic compositions. He wrote in both the talik and sülüs hands, and included calligraphic panels in his paintings. The diverse script styles he uses in depicting these panels show that he was able to write in these hands, although not highly accomplished in them. In an old painting dating from 1920, Prince Abdülmecit depicted a calligraphic panel hanging on the wall next to a mosque door. The Arabic inscription on the panel reads, "O God, who opens all doors, open your doors to us," written in Celisülüs script and must be his own work. Another of his oil paintings, entitled "A Beautiful Coffee Maker at the Palace," Dating 1895-96 depicts the Besmele inscribed in Kufi script above the door behind the woman in the picture. Along the wall to the right of the figure are two more Arabic inscription bands. The upper one in Kufi, reading, "There's no God but God, the eternal, the everlasting, the sustainer of all beings." And below this, written in a round hand resembling Sulis, the words, "La galibe illa Allah," "There is no victor but God." Prince Abdülmecit's famous Gote in the Harem painting features a calligraphic panel in Talik on the wall behind a reclining woman. On this panel, Abdülmecit has written the Arabic inscription, "Mürderhane-i Hat Hakm Süleyman," there. In his own house, the ant has the authority of Solomon. Unlike the inscription in his other paintings, Abdülmecit has drawn his own colophon on this calligraphic panel. From the reign of Ahmed III, but particularly during the reign of Sultan Ahmed II, it became customary to hang calligraphic panels mounted in gold frames on interior walls. In a portrait album dating from the reign of Mahmud II, the Ottoman sultans are depicted inside rooms decorated with calligraphic panels written in gold, lettering on a black ground. These are mounted in gilded frames and either hang on the wall behind the figures or lean against the wall next to them. List of calligraphic panels in the Topkapı Palace from the reign of Mahmud II onwards show that these were produced in large numbers during this period. The documents specify which were written by the sultans themselves. A document dated May 1839 gives an account of an incident that must have led the systematic inventories being made of calligraphic panels written by the sultans. One day, Sultan Mahmud II asked to see a panel written by his grandfather Ahmed III. According to this document, a search was made and the panel by Ahmed III was discovered in a circumcision chamber at the Topkapı Palace. That same day, a list of calligraphic panels, some by the sultans and others by professional calligraphers, was drawn up on the sultan's order. On February 1841, a new list of calligraphic panels by the sultans stored in the treasury was drawn up and presented to Sultan Abdülmecit. Another inventory dated November 1860, listing the calligraphic panels in the palace, was drawn up at the request of Sultan Abdülmecit. Another list, dated November 1876, was drawn up for Sultan Abdülhamid II. Another long and detailed list in the archive is undated, but since it includes a panel dated 1866-67, written by Sultan Abdülaziz, it can be assumed that it was drawn after his reign, probably for Sultan Abdülhamid II. A later note added to these records that it was examined by Sultan Mehmed VI Vahideddin on 13th of April 1922. It's interesting that this sultan examined a list of calligraphic composition by earlier Ottoman sultans during the last year of the Ottoman Empire. It appears that sultans who were proficient calligraphers regarded it as almost a spiritual duty to write calligraphic panels to hang on the walls of the mosques and other religious buildings that they founded or renovated. The most important shrine is the apartment of the Holy Mantle at the Topkapı Palace. This is regarded as the spiritual home of the Prophet Muhammad, and to serve the apartment of the Holy Mantle is an honor. One of these honorable duties undertaken by calligrapher sultans was to hang calligraphic panels that they had written in the rooms of this apartment, especially the privy chamber where the sacred relics were kept. The practice of hanging calligraphic compositions by the sultans on the walls of mosques and other sacred places became traditional during the reign of Sultan Ahmed III. When this sultan repaired the apartment of the Holy Mantle, his calligrapher panel, dating 1726, consisting of the text of the Tawhid, or Declaration of God's Unity, was hung over the entrance door. The same sultan wrote a second Tawhid inscription panel set in a frame encrusted with diamonds and rubies to hang on the wall of the private chamber in the apartment of the Holy Mantle. The Sultans presented their calligraphy panels to hang in a royal mosques they founded. Ahmed III wrote a composition consisting of the Hadis el-Cennetu tahte akdemil ümmehat, heaven lies beneath the feet of mothers, for the mosque founded by his mother, Gülnuş Rabia Sultan in Üsküdar. Ahmed III also wrote the inscriptions carved on the fountain that he built in the square in front of the main gate of the Topkapı Palace. This monumental fountain is familiar from the many drawings and paintings made by artists over the centuries. When Sultan Mahmud II restored the private chamber where the secret relics were kept, he had his inscription panels also hang on the walls. There are panels by the same Sultan in Hagia Sophia, Fatih Mosque, Beyazıt Mosque, Süleymaniye Mosque, Yeni Valide Mosque in Üsküdar, Valide Mosque in Aksaray, and Emirgan Mosque in Istanbul, and Bursa Ulu Cami, and Selimiye Mosque in Edirne. Like his grandfather, he gave priority to the royal mosques when hanging his own inscription panels. Inscription panels by Sultan Abdülmecit hang in the Mosque of the Holy Mantle in Fatih, in Ortaköy Mosque, Bezmialem Valide Sultan Mosque in Dolmabahçe, and Kılıç Ali Paşa Mosque. The Mosque of the Holy Mantle was built in 1851 by Sultan Abdülmecit to house the mantle of the Prophet to serve as a place where his holy relic could be visited. The calligraphic panels for the mosque were written by the Sultan and his calligraphy teacher, again famous Kazasker Mustafa İzzet. Like his father, Mahmud II, also Sultan Abdülmecit sent some of his calligraphic panels to mosques in cities other than Istanbul. Calligraphic panels by Sultan Abdülaziz hang in Valide Mosque in Aksaray, which was built for his mother, Pertevniyal Sultan, and completed in 1871. He also had one of his panels hung in the chamber among his other services to this apartment again. One of the finest of the panels, written by same Sultan, Abdülaziz, is in the tomb of Eyüp Sultan, who participated in the first Muslim siege of Istanbul and died there. For this reason, the Eyüp Sultan complex and his tomb in particular became one of the shrines that was meticulously maintained by the Ottoman sultans. Among the many sultans who hung calligraphic panels in this tomb were, of course, Ahmed III, Mahmud II, and Abdülmecit. Although Sultan Abdülhamid II didn't write any calligraphic panels to hang in a mosque, he commissioned the calligrapher Ebu Ziya Tevfik to write Kufi inscriptions for Yıldız Mosque, whose foundation was laid in 1881 and completed in 1885. Ebu Ziya's inscriptions, written in Celi Kufi, which was the script style best loved by Abdülhamid II, were hung in the prayer hall. Sultan Abdülhamid was not sufficiently skilled in calligraphy to write the inscriptions himself. He had Yıldız Mosque, which was associated so closely with this sultan, adorned with inscriptions in the style he so admired. The only inscription panel by Prince Abdülmecit in a mosque is in Fatih Mosque, which, as the first royal mosque built in Istanbul after the Ottoman conquest, holds a special place among the mosques of the city. Fatih Sultan Mehmet deliberately selected the site of the Byzantine Church of the 12 Apostles for the mosque complex that he built in his name. This complex became Istanbul's most important religious and cultural institution. After Abdülmecit Efendi became the last Muslim Caliph, he wrote an inscription panel dated 1923-24 that was mounted in a gilded frame decorated with the Ottoman armorial device and hung next to the prayer niche of this mosque, which holds such a significant place in the Islamic world. For this inscription, the Caliph chose a verse about conquest from the Saf Surah of the Quran. This inscription suggests that the panel was written by him, especially for this Fatih Mosque. From archive documents, we learn that the Sultan's wives, mothers, and daughters occasionally wrote calligraphic inscription panels. The palace was an environment where art was highly valued and widely practiced, where it was possible for those interested in calligraphy and who showed aptitude for this art to study under master calligraphers and where they could see outstanding examples of calligraphy, including panels hanging on the walls. However, it appears that this art environment declined from the reign of Sultan Mahmud II onwards, when the Ottoman rulers began to live in newly built palaces on the shores of the Bosphorus instead of the Topkapı Palace. Abdülmecid and Abdülaziz, the sons of Mahmud II, were the last members of the dynasty to have spent time living at the Topkapı Palace. And the younger generation grew up without experiencing the art environment of this palace, filled with masterpieces of the arts of the book. Another factor was the influence of changing circumstances that led to a diminishing interest in the art of calligraphy that had pervaded palace life in former times. As we learn from contemporary newspapers and magazines, this movement away from this imported traditional art began for the Ottoman people as a whole in the mid-19th century, although members of the royal family retained close contact with the arts and artists of the book until the end of the century. And thank you for your patience. I hope that my talk has provided some insight into the subject, so we can continue to discuss at the galleries of the museum. Thank you once again.